did you work year round or?
I ended up working year round. I became the first woman squad leader in the United States.
When was that? What year?
89, I think. Yeah, packed parachutes and ended up working on the pumper project and various things in the winter. Yeah, it was good.
And then, do you remember the fires? Any of the fires come to your mind that you jumped, your fire jumps?
Yeah, there's a couple. Actually, there's many of them. There's one I'll just tell you just because this is one that comes up a lot. We were in, Larry Fite was leading, we had sub bases back then. And so I was down in Hamilton. Much of my time I was up in Lincoln, and I also was up in Plains. And I loved it because with a sub base setup, you were able to work preseason, postseason, as well as get, so you get extra work, but also just being in the woods. So to me, it was great. It would kill me to be in Missoula just sitting around, with all the chutes packed and nothing to do. That would just drive me crazy. So I loved it. So at the Hamilton base, we went off to a fire, and we were eastern Washington, someplace, I can't remember exactly where, and various jumpers had jumped different parts of the fire. And we were digging mine like crazy, looked up and saw this big black cloud coming our way. And just about then, Larry says, "Hey, we better go." So we all kind of file out after him, and we go get into this draw, and we kind of line up down this draw, all of us. And for some reason, I'm still not sure why we did this, but anyway, we're all, hunkering down because lightning and it's starting to rain. It's raining hard, and then it's raining harder. And I had my little mani over me, which most people did. And I found a little bush, which I thought was pretty cool because I could tie off the mani and then sit there with a little bit more room underneath me, instead of just being draped by the mani. And you could hear the hail coming and everybody saying, "Ouch, ouch, oh, come here, oh, oh." As it got harder and harder. And then Terry Williamson yells, and he was up the draw from me, and it says, "Look out!" And all of a sudden I picked up my mani and I looked up, and this big wall of water started running down the draw. And I'm sitting there, and I try to jump up just like everybody else jumps up and runs. Try to jump up, but I'm stuck because my mani's tied off to this bush, and the other side is tied off to my radio or water or something, and I can't get up. And I'm laughing pretty hard, but I'm sitting there, water's rising, and a cubitainer floats by, something else floats by, and pretty soon I'm up to here. Todd Sherwood, who's this guy who must have been 6'4", 6'5", and he has his slickers on, and he steps out there. And by this time I'd untied myself, and he kind of just picks me up like this and drops me off over on the side.
That's great.
Yeah. So that went down in history. That one. So Maynard, tell us about the time you got caught in the flash flood.
Yeah, I trained with Todd Sherwood.
Oh.
Well,
okay.
so you saw other women follow you. You were in a position to see what. I mean, there's been quite a few women Smokejumpers, haven't there, since you were there, since you started?
There were. There still are. We had a 30-year anniversary of Women Smokejumpers. I don't think it's ever gotten to be too large. I can't tell you how many there are right now, but in a way, it makes sense because it's a job that only particular people really want to do anyway, and I don't think there's many women who want to do it as men. So it makes sense that there's fewer. But I've met some pretty incredible women. I mean, just yeah, and obviously some really amazing men. They're pretty much, the men are around here pretty much my best friends. We hang out, we drink beer on Thursday nights. It's great.
Yeah.
Great
You still do that on Thursday nights?
Yep, still do. We tell stories.
Yeah, well, that's cool.
Even though we've heard them all.
Well, so you finished jumping in 90?
1990 was my last year.
And why'd you decide to pack it in?
Well, I was getting into the international disaster business. I had worked over the winter. I went to Algeria on a locust plague tour for U.S. Agency for National Development. And Forest Service has a relationship with them for surge capacity, and so I had this international studies background and spoke a little French and aviation, and so I went over there and loved it. And then I went back the next winter to work. We actually designed the international disasters response for the United States government to mimic the ICS system.
Uh-huh.
It was pretty neat. So I spent the winter doing that, developing that, and then I the following year I went over to Guinea and worked for the International Federation of the Red Cross, supplying food to refugees from Liberia.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of took off from there. That's been my...
So what kind of things after that did you do?
I worked in probably pretty much all the hellholes of the world. Humanitarian disaster, but then it was amazing. I mean, Somalia, the famine there. I did hurricanes and various things. But then I started getting into more wars and conflicts, civil wars, because it really started bubbling up about the 90s. And I said, there's got to be a better way to do this. This is not necessarily very effective. So I went back to school and got my doctorate in international affairs, and then I've just been doing that kind of thing forever, work in supporting communities and countries, so various levels of people who've been involved in civil wars or in the heart of it, and what does it take to recover? You have infrastructure, you have buildings and destruction and all kinds of things, but you also have economy, and then you also have social relationships, that are torn apart. And so I've worked at that pretty much for the last, 30 years or something.
That's really impressive. Well, so this current Ebola breakout in West Africa, is that drawing you toward it at all?
I've thought about it. I've spent a fair bit of time in Liberia, and it's an incredible place, so I really like it. But it's...
But it's an agency for international development, is the lead agency. The Defense Department is supporting it, so
that's right.
Some of the training that you did, is that being applied, do you think?
Yes,
Incident command?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the mechanism for disaster response for international disasters is disaster assistance response teams, which are DARTs. And a DART is leading that response. And,
I saw that.
Yeah. It's very, it gets complex, especially with the interrelationship between agencies. You have State Department, Defense, and lots of others, CDC.
Yeah, I was banging my head on at the Pentagon on how to get the Joint Operations Plan and Execution System of the military to work with the ICS on the civilian side.
Okay.
Because the only entities, the Coast Guard and the National Guard, are the only military entities that could cross both sides.
Yeah.
But I had never heard of DART before.
Yeah. Well, the part of USAID that does this is called an Office of Foreign Disaster Assistance, OFDA. And then the teams that are sent out that are pulled together from various places, and sometimes Forest Service people. This surge capacity that I first started with goes on to DART, and they go out with the components that you need. You might need healthcare, in that context, or you might need engineers if it's an earthquake or whatever. So it depends on the type of emergency.
So, but you're teaching at the university now.
Yeah. So my husband and I retired, sort of semi-retired, about 8 years ago, and we decided to, I said, when we met, I said, look, you get me, you get Montana, I'm heading back, because I was mostly living overseas at that time, and had a base in Washington, D.C. area, so I took him out here and tested him out, and he passed, and Montana passed his test. And anyway, met a bunch of jumper buddies and all works. He's a parachute expert, so it fit pretty well into the whole
Oh,
design
yeah.
of things.
Yeah.
So we said, yeah, we had bought land, 1997, we bought land here. I should have bought it, many years before that. And then we came back and started building and, yeah, put this together and here we are. And so I'm still working some.
Yeah.
And I wanted to stay connected with the international community, such as it is here in Montana, whoever's doing it. So I'm a fellow at the Mansfield Center, and then I teach some, and then I do other things, trying to develop the international foundation of the university.
So what are the names of the courses that you teach, for example, or
Well, I
have
teach
taught?
a class called Transitions from War to Peace, and it's a graduate, upper undergraduate level class. That's what I'm doing now. And then I've lectured a lot in other ones, and I'm teaching a adult class called International Disasters. How can I help? So that's a Molly class, and that's fun. And that's what I'm doing this fall. And then so I'm just part time. I'm not
Yeah.
full-fledged academic.
And you make it to Thursdays to drink beer with the
Yeah,
other
absolutely.
jumpers. Where's that at, by the way?
Well, we had to move because our bar closed down, but we are now going to the Union Club.
Oh, okay, that's a
Which
good place.
yeah, you gotta come visit.
I just might.
Yeah.
Well, so as you look back,